Recording in progress.
All right, it's 6 p.m. I'd like to call the August 14th Alameda County Water District Board meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Director Akbari. Here. Gunther.
Here.
Sethy.
Here.
Weed.
Here.
And Huang.
Here. Next is salute to the flag. Director Sethy, would you do the honor?
Yes. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic which stands
indivisible, with
liberty and justice.
Before we move on to the next item, I believe General Manager Stevenson has some housekeeping remarks.
I do. I just wanted to welcome everybody to our board meeting this evening. My name is Ed Stevenson and I serve as the district's general manager. Members of the public may participate in this board meeting in person or remotely by either using the Zoom application or by telephone. Any member of the public present in person who wishes to make comments may approach the speaker's podium at the appropriate time. For those participating remotely, note that the meeting agenda, staff reports, and presentation materials for this meeting are all available on the district's website. You may reference the instructions at the top of the agenda for how to participate using the controls in the Zoom app or your dial pad if participating by telephone audio. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available to the public for future viewing. Thank you all for attending, and President Huang, that completes my housekeeping remarks.
All right, so with that, let's move on to public comments. Members of the public may address the board on any issue not listed on the agenda, which are within the purview of the Alameda County Water District. A 5-minute limit is customary. Members of the public who wish to address the board on a scheduled agenda item will be given the opportunity to do so. So with that, I see we have a lot of company today. Welcome, and thank you for taking the time out to be here. Do I have any members of the public that's currently in the audience that wish to address the board today? If so, please step up to the podium. Okay, I'm not seeing any. So for members of the public that's online, if you wish to address the board during the public comment period, please raise your hand. I am not seeing hands online.
Same here. I don't see hands up.
Okay, then let's move on to consent calendar. Do I have a motion to add items to the consent calendar?
I'll move that we add items 5.1, 5.2 to consent.
Do I have a second? Okay. Roll call, please.
Director Akbari. Aye. Gunther.
Aye.
Sethy.
Aye.
Weed.
Aye.
And Huang.
Aye. Do I have a motion to adopt the consent calendar as amended?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Director Akbari. Aye. Gunther.
Aye.
Sethy.
Aye.
Weed.
Aye.
And Huang.
Aye. Let's move on to item 5.3.
Thank you, President Huang. Item 5.3 is authorization to enter into an agreement for the delivery of employee development training services. And to step us through this item, I'll ask Mr. Wunderlich to take over.
Well, I'm dealing with some computer challenges this evening, so I'm not totally have everything in front of me, but I'll do my best here. And let's see if. Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. So the district's agreement with Cooperative Personnel Services doing business as CPS HR Consulting, or CPS HR, for leading and facilitating the employee development training programs, also known as the Leadership Skills and Universal Skills Training Programs, expired June 30th of this year. The curriculum for these programs was developed collaboratively by CPS HR and the district's Human Resources and Risk Manager. And we do wish to continue offering these programs for an additional 3 years with the option to extend for 2 more years beyond that. The current curriculum includes 25 courses, also with additional flexibility for optional courses as needed to provide fully kind of rounded out training programs. The anticipated cost is not to exceed $350,000 for the initial 3-year term, with an additional $100,000 per year. Adequate funding is available in the fiscal year 25-26 budget, and future budgets will include funding provisions for these expenditures. Approval of this contract will support strategic plan goal 4, improve workforce recruitment, maintain retention, and enhance employee engagement. So the recommendation for this item is by motion, authorize the general manager to enter into an agreement for the provision of employee development training services with Cooperative Personnel Services doing business as CPS HR Consulting for a term of 3 years for a total estimated cost not to exceed $350,000 with an optional 2-year extension with the cost not to exceed $200,000. Now, before I turn this over for any public or board questions or feedback, I wanted to get into a little more detail about some of these training programs that we offer. So for example, I referenced a universal skills training program. This is a series of courses that are offered periodically and are available to all district employees who wish to participate. All of these training programs are all done on work time with everything fully paid by the district. And some examples of classes included in the Universal Skills Training Program would be things like emotional intelligence, public speaking, writing skills, time management, just general skills that really, no matter what your classification or career interests are skills that will assist you both in terms of performing your current duties for the district more efficiently, but also in developing your skills and your opportunities for career advancement. One of the other programs that was mentioned is the Leadership Skills Training Program. And this is a program that really goes through skills and knowledge that are important for supervisors and managers to have. And so that's really the target audience. And all district supervisors or managers, supervisors or division managers are required to complete this program. If they haven't, so if they're an internal employee who's promoted into a position, they may have already completed it. But if they're an external hire or an internal hire that hasn't completed it, they are required to complete these training programs. So we make sure all of our supervisors and managers have a common and consistent understanding of basic supervisory practices and principles. The other thing too is that for our supervisory positions and division manager positions, employees are either required to have prior what we call lead experience, whether that's as like a lead staff person or prior supervisory experience in order to qualify to compete for those positions. And because of the nature of the size of our organization, it's not like there are just, we're not as large as some other organizations where maybe there are a lot of lead positions that people can funnel through before they might want to look into a supervisory position. And so completing this training program is a way to meet that requirement of lead experience because you've gone through the training and learned, at least in an academic setting, some of these skills, which are still going to help you even before you're in a supervisory position. And as examples of some of the types of classes that are included in here would be things like empowerment and delegation, conflict resolution, building your team, change management, conducting effective meetings, but also some things that maybe touch on the legal side, like understanding the do's and don'ts of discriminatory laws and practices, or anti-discriminatory laws and practices, I should say. And so that's kind of what's involved in that program. We also work with CPS HR to provide other types of training services. So for example, when we do sexual harassment prevention training and we provide on-site in-person courses, we'll frequently use them and lean on these contracts for that type of class. And then the last thing I wanted to highlight is if we have very specialized interests or needs, we can also work with them on those. So for example, we are a service organization. We interact with customers every day, whether those customers are our actual 350,000 people we serve in the community, businesses or other organizations that we work with to accomplish our mission. We work with customers frequently. And Amongst the employee group, frequently it's internal customers. If you work in purchasing, your customer might be somebody that works in facilities maintenance, right? And so we worked with CPS HR to develop a customized customer service training. That was a half-day training, and we conducted multiple sessions of that earlier this year. We had 60 employees attend, which included all of our customer service staff, of course, but many other employees throughout the district where those types of direct customer service facing skills would be really valuable. And we were able to really focus in on helping build skills and how you interact with customers, how you de-escalate when there's a tense or high stress situation that develops with the customer. And it was a really great opportunity to provide that type of training to our employees, and we received a lot of great feedback on that. And so I know I've gone on for a while now, so I'll stop here, but I just wanted you all to get a little more of a feel for all the types of training programs we have going on here at the district.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Director Weed?
Two. First of all, have you had an opportunity to review the JPIA training programs?
Yeah, so there are training programs available through Aqua JPIA. We do try to utilize some of those when we can. There can be some overlap with some of these like sexual harassment prevention trainings, but a lot of those also veer more toward like the employee health and safety side, which would be a little different than some of these where it's more kind of general skills.
And the second, have we asked them to give us any information they have on the compatibility or the coordination of their programs with academic credit at an accredited institution, particularly the community colleges?
Yeah, so that's not something that we currently do through this. This is all tailored for what the district feels is needed for our employees and for the benefit of our employees to help them with their jobs here at the district and also with their general career development. But it's not something that we currently do in terms of trying to turn these into like a community college program where there would be that type of credit.
Let me encourage you to have someone talk to the community college, Maloney Community College, area, and see if they would grant credit for some of these courses that would be offered. They get paid by the state based on daily attendance, so it would not be a major cost to us, but it would be a benefit to the employees, to even a unit on a half a unit in a training program. As much of the grad degree is the number of units, not necessarily study courses.
Any other questions or comments from the board? If not, do we have any questions or comments from our members of the public that's in attendance today? Seeing none, how about online? Do we have any members of the public online that have questions or comments on this item? If you do, please raise your hand. I am not seeing any hands. So with that, do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion to adopt staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Directors Akbari. Aye. Gunther.
Aye.
Sethy.
Aye.
Weed.
Hi.
And Huang.
Aye. All right, next item is item 5.4, public hearing to receive comments on the draft Alameda County Water District Report on Water Quality relative to Public Health Goals 2022 to 2024. On behalf of the Board of Directors, I would like to welcome the public and your participation in this evening's public hearing. The purpose of the public hearing is to receive and hear comments on the Alameda County Water District Report on Water Quality relative to Public Health Goal 2022 to 2024. Thank you for attending. Now, I would like to review the ground rules for the public hearing. 1. Process. I will open public hearing. ACWD staff will make a brief presentation. The presentation material can be viewed online through the Zoom app or can be accessed on the district's website with the agenda and materials for this meeting at acwd.org. Upon conclusion of the presentation, the board and ACWD staff will receive public comments. The board and staff will receive all comments at this time without responding. Upon conclusion of the public comments, the board may request input from staff and will respond to questions and comments from the public and will then close the public hearing. 2, time limit. Each person will have 5 minutes to comment. 3, speaker requests. Anyone who would like to make public comments can do so by filling out a speaker card here in the boardroom, or by raising your hand in the Zoom app, submitting your comments or questions in the chat feature in Zoom, or by speaking up verbally when invited to do so. If you are participating online, please raise your hand in the Zoom app. For those participating on Zoom by phone, Zoom allows you to use your dial pad. Star 9 to raise, lower your hand. The Assistant District Secretary will then unmute remote meeting participants when making public comments. Please be sure to unmute your own phone lines or computer microphone so that you may be heard. Zoom allows you to use your dial pad, star 6, to unmute your phone. For those participating online that may not have a microphone on their computer, please dial in by phone at the number given on the agenda. If you are participating online and we are unable to hear you during the public comment portion of the hearing, please use the chat box feature of the Zoom interface to get the attention of the Assistant District Secretary. Please state your name and service address when making a verbal comment. Providing this information is voluntary. The public hearing is now open. I will now ask General Manager to review the item.
Thank you, President Huang. As required by the California Health and Safety Code, Section 116470, a draft report titled Alameda County Water District Report on Water Quality Relative to Public Health Goals 2022 to 2024 has been prepared by district staff. The purpose of the Public Health Goal Report is to inform consumers of constituents in their drinking water that exceeded either a California Public Health Goal, or PHG, or a Federal Maximum Contaminant Level Goal, or MCLG, during the calendar years 2022, 2023, and 2024. PHGs and MCLGs are goals that help guide regulators and utilities to understand what the safest possible levels are for drinking water constituents. These are not enforceable standards, but rather goals provided based solely on health considerations without regard to technical feasibility, analytical limits of detection, or cost of source controls or treatment. The Public Health Goal Report is intended to provide the public with water quality information beyond what is included in the Annual Consumer Confidence Report or Water Quality Report. ACWD's recently published Water Quality Report includes all of the public health goals or maximum contaminant level goals for constituents that were detected in water provided by ACWD, in addition to all enforceable water quality standards. The aforementioned statute requires the board to hold a public hearing and to accept and respond to public comments to the Public Health Goal Report. Any public comments received during the public hearing this evening will be responded to in the final PHG report, which will be finalized with notice to the state of California by October 1st, 2025. Notice of this evening's public hearing was placed in the Argus on July 4 and July 11, the Tri-City Voice on July 1 and July 8, and on the district's website. The PHG report was reviewed with the Operations and Water Quality Board Committee on June 3rd, 2025. And I'll now turn this over to the district's Director of Operations and Maintenance, Dan Stevenson, no relation, who will provide some additional context and introduce our presenter, who will provide a summary of the report.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Good evening, members of the board, fellow staff, and members of the public. As Mr. Stevenson mentioned, public health goals and maximum contaminant level goals are non-enforceable health-based water quality goals. However, ACWD does account for such goals in our operations, and we take steps to meet these goals when technically and financially feasible. As detailed in our water quality reports, ACWD consistently meets all enforceable water quality standards and also meets many PHGs and MCLGs. The report on water quality relative to public health goals highlights only those constituents for which these non-enforceable PHGs and MCLGs were not invariably met during 2022 through 2024. Now I'd like to introduce Ranga Sampath, environmental engineer in our water production division, to provide a brief summary of the key information in the report on water quality relative to public health goals 2022 through 2024. Ranga?
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Good evening, members of the board, district staff, and members of the public. Like what was mentioned, I will be providing an overview of the 2025 Public Health Goals Report, which basically has a collection of data over 3 calendar years, 2022, 2023, and 2024, and discuss the exceedances we've had. But again, to reiterate, public health goals are not enforceable. These are strictly mandated by the Office of Environmental Health Assessment, OEHA, and these are purely health-based goals. We do meet all the MCLs, the maximum contaminant levels that are enforceable, and like Mr. Stevenson mentioned, all efforts are made to also try and meet the public health goals to the reasonable possible extent. As you will see, some of them are fairly low numbers. Even the detection limits for some of those is almost impossible to accomplish by the laboratories, but these are health-based goals, something to keep on the radar. Next slide, please. In the report, there are a bunch of acronyms, but as you can see, what's of relevance tonight is, of course, the PHG, the public health goals, the MCLs that we all know, maximum contaminant levels, and then the maximum contaminant level goals. Every year we put out what we call the consumer confidence report that goes out to the members of the public. And those have all the MCLs and all the criteria laid out there. A couple of terms you will hear tonight which are important is because the public health goals also mandates that you got to have what are the best available technologies out there currently to treat these constituents in water primarily. And also there is this term called running annual average, not to go too deep into statistics or mathematics, but the overall goal is to account for spatial or temporal variability and have a uniform distribution of the data. So it's more like a average over 4 quarters, but that's taken over each quarter. So it's the current quarter plus the previous 3. And as we get to the data, I'll again explain in detail. And of course, we all know PFAS, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, which are stain resistant, water repellent, have excellent properties, but we know it's been a problem. It's and we do have a PFAS treatment system at the blending facility. And we also have a monitoring program, which I'll touch upon. And then the units, of course, micrograms per liter is something we all have heard in the field of water, drinking water. But when you get into the realm of PFAS, we are looking at parts per trillion, very, very low numbers. And even at those low numbers, PFAS, as we all know, have MCLs, which are very low. But just a list of the definitions. And again, I will be referring to these over the presentation. Next slide. So like Mr. Stevenson mentioned, a PHG report is required by the Health and Safety Code 116470B. It's done once every 3 years. And the report is presented. It's a draft is posted on the website for public to comment. And like at tonight's board, we are going over the report, and then if there are no comments, then a final version will be issued and sent to the Division of Drinking Water by November 1st. Utilities such as ours, which have greater than 10,000 service connections in California and have detected any water quality measurements above the PHGs or the MCLGs. Now, the MCLGs are the federal numbers, maximum contaminant level goals, and the PHGs are a state level thresholds that are set by the OEHA. Anytime in the past 3 years, according to the Health and Safety Code, should prepare a brief written report by July 1st. So we did prepare the draft report, post it on the website, hold a public hearing, which we are doing tonight. And then if there are any comments, we factor those in, address the comments. If there are no comments, then we notify the Division of Drinking Water that a public hearing was held and the report is available. And that has to be done before November 1st. Next slide, please. Like we mentioned a few times, public health goals are not enforceable. These are purely health-based goals. They were established by OEHA, and typically for carcinogenic substances that are there's a likely probable potential carcinogens. The health risk that they take or consider is no more than 1 additional cancer risk in 1 million people. So as you can see, it's a very, very ultra conservative threshold. And these are again based solely on public health, regardless of is there detection limits that can be achieved that low? Are there treatment technologies that will remove contaminants to that level, or the cost associated? It does not consider any of those, purely health-based risk. Whereas an MCL, the consumer confidence report that we issue, and the maximum contaminant levels are regulatory thresholds, and those have to be met. And they do consider all the variables in addition to the health-based risks, the cost of treatment, the feasibility of treatment, the feasibility of analytical detection by labs that they can be quantified with very good confidence. So that's the difference there. Again, the federal MCLGs, again, are not enforceable. The difference is these are established by the US EPA. So these are federal numbers. And again, an MCLG is set at the level of a contaminant in drinking water below which there is no known or expected risk to health. And the MCLGs are the federal equivalents of the PHGs. So on the state level, you have PHGs. On the federal level, you have MCLGs, but neither of them are enforceable. So that's something to keep in mind. Next slide, please. The definition here, again, MCLs is important because MCLs are enforceable, and they are set close to MCLGs as feasible using what we call the BAT, the best available treatment technology, and also takes cost into consideration. So the MCLs is protective of human health, and it's more practical because it considers all those variables, and those are enforceable. Next slide, please. So the contents of the report that we posted on our website and what's there is it's once every 3 years. It identifies constituents that have been detected in our water that exceed the PHGs or the MCLGs in the 3 calendar years, 22, 23, and 24. And the report identifies what the health risks are associated with those constituents that exceed these PHGs. And the report also describes what are the best available technologies and a cost estimate to remove or reduce that constituent to the PHG or MCLG. So you got to have all these components captured in the report. Next slide. So there are hundreds of chemicals with PHGs or MCLGs. So of all of those, only 2 were exceeded. Bromate, which is more of a surface water treatment plant a constituent primarily. And then, of course, we had 1 PFAS compound, PFOS. The acronym there is perfluorooctane sulfonic acid. Having been in the monitoring program for many years, I'm able to reasonably spell out the acronyms. And total coliform is something, so we do follow the Association of California Water Agencies guidance that's prepared every year on how do you prepare a PHG report. And this year, the total coliform also was one of the constituents based on the number of positives. We had 1 event. According to the revised total coliform rule, you have a certain number of total coliform positives, then there is a find and fix approach, and it's also reportable. That's why that's made it in this report this time. And I'll go over that, what the reasons are and the technologies available. So as you can see, the far right column, bromate, that's the running annual average. So over 4 quarters, we've had detections ranging between non-detect and 2.3 parts per billion micrograms per liter. When you come into PFAS, we've had detections between 2 and 4.5 nanograms per liter. That's the part per trillion. We go further down on the scale. Total coliform, we have 1 event. It's the number of events. So you have 1 event. We had a total coliform positive. I want to emphasize total coliform, not an E. coli, but a total coliform positive in the distribution system. We have 53 key sampling points all over our distribution network. We had 1 key point that had the issue. And that basically required an investigation for what it qualified as a potential significant rise in bacterial count in the distribution system. So that's something that has to be addressed. One thing to note here is we all know the MCL for PFAS is 4 parts per trillion, or interchangeably, I'm using the term, but nanograms per liter to be consistent. We've had an exceedance 4.5, but that was before the issuance of the MCLs in April of last year. So it was a data point prior to that. But because the running annual average, as you can see, is 22, 23, and 24, something to be noted, the 4.5 nanograms per liter was before the MCL establishment. But nevertheless, all these, they made the chart because they all exceeded the PHGs. Next slide. So what's bromate? So it's a byproduct from the ozonation process. So at TP2, we use ozone as the primary disinfectant there in treatment. So the PHG for bromate is set at 0.1 parts per billion or micrograms per liter. The MCLG, the federal EPA said it's 0. Basically, you can't have any bromate. Health risk, bromate is known to be a probable carcinogen to humans. And we are in full compliance of the MCL. The MCL is set at 10 micrograms per liter, much, much higher, orders of magnitude higher than the PHG. And the bromate running average range from, like I mentioned on the previous chart, anywhere between non-detect to 2.3 micrograms per liter. And the formation, the bromate formation is normally associated with variations in bromide levels. So in the raw water, the primarily coming from the delta, one of the most common sources is the salinity or the brackish water mixing. That's the source of bromide. And when you have that go through an ozonation process, it leads to bromate. So it's that finished water bromate we are concerned about. Next slide. I know it's a busy slide, but the takeaway is we've had bromate detections, like I said, ranging between non-detect and 2.3, which is what's captured on this chart. The PHG is 0.1, so basically it's almost like 0 on this graph. And as you can see, the MCL is set way higher, 10 micrograms per liter. So the running annual average all across these quarters is well below the MCLs, which is the enforceable standard. Next slide, please. So going back to tracing what are the sources of bromate? So bromide ozonation leads to bromate, but this is just on the same 3 years. This shows a range of bromide levels in raw water. So the y-axis again is micrograms per liter. So this is the bromide level that's in the raw water at TP2 primarily. And then over the 3 years, you see a range anywhere between the low 30, 40s, like 2023, up until 300, and then the first year, 2022, all the way up to 400. But just to give an idea of the efficacy of the treatment, that your finished water bromate is very low, but nevertheless above the PHG, but the efficient, there is a ozone and the treatment and bromate in the finished water is very low. Next slide. So what are the best available treatment technologies out there, which we are already implementing at Treatment Plan 2 for several years now? The Division of Drinking Water and EPA mentioned that in a PhD report, you will capture what the best available treatment technologies are. The DDW and EPA consider control of ozone treatment process, because when you have water with bromide in contact with ozone causes the bromate. So as long as you're able to control that ozone treatment to reduce the production of bromate in your finished water, that's the best available technologies. So we have done a few studies before and have implemented bromate control strategies. One is pH suppression, because the production of bromate as a result of ozonation is pH dependent. So we want to kind of keep that pH low, so which we have accomplished. And also pre-chloramination, where you add the disinfectant before, so that you're able to control the process and control the production of bromate. Out of the 12 quarters, over those 3 years, the running annual average bromate was non-detectable in 2 out of 12 quarters. But like you saw, the source water, you have other challenges. So there is always some bromate above the pH, but nevertheless controlled pretty good. Again, low levels of bromate were detected between 2022 and 2024 because of source water quality variations. And we had some equipment maintenance, brief outages of the pre-chloramination system that led to this temporary bromate increases, but nevertheless still well below the MCLs. So we have achieved all the goals per the PhD report, establishing the best available technology for bromate control. The next one, next slide, please. So the activities we've been implementing, like I said, pH suppression since 2002, basically using carbon dioxide ahead of ozonation, where you lower your pH so that your bromate production is controlled. And we have maintained bromate below the MCLs. Then between 2007 and 2009, a pre-chloramination study was conducted by the district. And what it had demonstrated was pre-chloramine addition ahead of the ozone contactors that we have at TP2 is highly effective. And in fact, bromate reduction by 81%. So pH suppression alone was one technique. On top of it, we also have the pre-chloramination, which really was even more effective, reduced bromate formation by 81%. And full implementation at TP2, we've had it since 2011. So the best available technologies have already been implemented at TP2. Next slide. Yeah. Coming to PFOS, perfluorooctane sulfonic acid. It's part of a larger group of compounds that we all know, PFAS. Over a few thousand compounds exist out there, all man-made. MCL was established for this PFAS and some other PFAS compounds in 2024, the federal MCL, that is. And just a background, we began a voluntary monitoring program for PFAS for all our source wells and entry points to distribution system in 2020, and then annually at TP2, which is surface water for the raw water and finished water. This was before any mandatory monitoring orders were issued by the Division of Drinking Water. Then when several agencies across the state got monitoring orders, and we also got monitoring orders, but we were ahead of the game in terms of trying to know what are we looking at in terms of PFAS compounds in our water sources. PFOS in particular is, again, possibly carcinogenic to humans. And we are in full compliance of the federal MCL, which is set at 4 nanograms. That's even smaller than microgram, like I said. So 4 nanograms, that's very low, and we are able to meet those numbers. And the running annual average ranged from 2 to 4.5. That was already captured in the table. And again, the 4.5 nanograms per liter was before the establishment of the federal MCLs. Next slide. The takeaway again, just the bar graph shows the quarterly running annual average. Like you can see, the 4.5 was in 2022 before the establishment of the MCL, all those quarters. But then what's interesting to note here is soon after the first quarter of 2024, the MCL was established at 4 nanograms per liter. But after that, with the combination of blending strategies and of course the 6 MGD IX system, we have managed to maintain all entry point water that goes into the distribution well below the MCLs. So that's kind of a treatment technology right there. Next slide. So what are some of the best available technologies? These have been there in the industry since the early 70s, 80s for other constituents. But reverse osmosis works very well. Ion exchange and granular activated carbon, all of these work. And in fact, when we were looking at the treatment at the blending facility, we looked at through column studies and various other studies, we looked at both ion exchange and granular activated carbon, because both of them, depending on your source water quality and the footprint of the facility, do a good job. But ion exchange was a tad better and more effective in our case, so we went with an IX. So these are all good technologies out there that work very well for most PFAS compounds and particularly PFOS. Next slide. So what are our activities to reduce PFOS? We used operational strategies like you saw in the graph. Well below, before the IX came in, we managed through blending strategies to keep the concentrations below the MCLs. And there's a new term here, California notification level. So the Division of Drinking Water had their own notification level, where if you exceed that in your entry point, you would notify the board, the city constituents. But we also manage, as soon as we got that number that was established, we were below that threshold also. And that was done through, like I said, operational strategies. And then, of course, we have a 6 MGD ion exchange treatment to treat a portion of the raw groundwater that's entering the blending facility. And through a blend percentage of the PFAS to non-PFAS water, 25% or below, we managed to always stay below the MCLs for water that's served to our customers. And our goal is to maintain that levels at the entry point below MCLs at all times. And the federal MCL, like I said, is 4 nanograms per liter. Would we have non-detect PFAS levels? Because you did see some numbers in the like 2 and 3s. It's possible when you have low demands and like such as winter months when there is low flow and the blending is, then we can have that. Or the other option, as you know, the IX system was designed at least for the scalable 15 MGD in the future. So if you have a 15 MGD PFAS treatment system that would basically treat all groundwater entering the blending facility, then we can manage to keep those PFAS at non-detects. But again, like I said, the PHGs are not enforceable, but the MCLs are, and we continue to meet all the MCLs. Next slide, please. So total coliform this year is new. Total coliform basically are indicative of bacterial activity in the system. We have 53 dedicated sampling points. Lab staff go and routinely collect chlorine and just to chlorine and hardness. Those are taken on a weekly basis, and the sampling is done more every week. So in November of 2024, there was one event that had total coliform positives. After the first one, a few successive, that under the revised total coliform rule triggered what they call a significant rise in bacterial count. It's a regulatory threshold term, like what's written there. Doesn't mean it's a problem, but you have to investigate and what they call implement a find and fix. Go find and fix that problem. So that's what it entails. So you have to investigate and correct the causes. Again, all of those locations where total coliform were positive, we tested for E. coli and they were all negative. So it's an indicator of some bacterial action, but there is no E. coli. So we did repeat sampling per the revised total coliform rule at all the locations, and find and fix. So one is repeat sampling, then find the source. The source was identified. Alameda Reservoir had gone through after 2 years of roof replacement and projects. So it was brought back online, reservoir maintenance. So the source was basically identified and corrective actions were taken. Basically flush that portion of the line that's being fed by the reservoir, lower the reservoir level again, rechlorinate, make sure, do a due diligence on all the sampling, and all the repeat samples were all negative. So we assured sanitary conditions of the distribution system, and we are in full compliance with the revised total coliform rule. So essentially, we found the problem, we fixed the problem. Next slide. So what are the activities to reduce total coliform positives? So we maintain effective disinfectant level in the distribution system at all times. Next month, I think the committee will hear, but we will start our annual main flushing program, which we have been doing the unidirectional flushing. We pick a quarter of the distribution system and go over a flushing system. We do have a tank and reservoir cleaning program, and we also have a cross-connection control program and a surveillance. All the production wells are protected from any microbial contamination, and if we have new wells, then there is a drinking water, source water assessment program, a thorough due diligence that's done. Staff is engaged in bacteriological sampling, so whenever there is a positive, then there is a interview process, there is what happened, try to understand the process and the sampling so that we don't have any repeats, which is the next bullet. Essentially interview staff and document incident and possible causes, and following any total coliform positive events. And of course, when you go out there and look at all the distribution key sampling points, they are all under lock and key and well protected. So we make sure anything that's questionable is immediately addressed, so there is no compromise of any of the distribution system. Next slide. So the actions. So for each of these, we have seen what the best available technology is and what's being implemented. So the actions, we will continue the pre-chloramination as key bromate control strategy. That's primarily at our surface water treatment plant TP2. The IX PFAS treatment system is continuing to be operated and maintain that percent blend to minimize PFAS levels in treated water. Again, the minimize essentially means try to not have any increasing trends, but the goal at all times, I want to emphasize, is we will remain below the MCLs, which are enforceable standards at all times. And have all the proactive steps we will be implementing to minimize coliform positives in the distribution system. So keep the distribution system intact in very good sanitary condition with all the best management practices I just mentioned. So that's kind of all the actions for addressing all of these constituents that were detected above the PHGs. I think with that, next slide is probably questions. Recommendations, sorry. So the recommendation tonight from staff to the board is receive any comments on the draft Alameda County Water District report on water quality relative to public health goals 22-24. And any questions?
Okay. Thank you. So with that, I will now open the hearing to public comments. Has the Assistant Secretary received any written comments?
We have received no written comments.
All right. We'll now invite comments from members of the public participating in this hearing. Will the Assistant District Secretary please call out each speaker that submitted a speaker's card?
We have received no speaker's card.
All right. Will the Assistant District Secretary please unmute the meeting participants that have raised their hand in the Zoom app so that they may make public comments? I believe we have one hand.
Yep. And it looks like our one hand is unmuted. Is that right?
Thank you. Thank you very much, President Huang.
My name is Ken Nishimura. My address of record is on file with the district. Thank you for your presentation and public hearing on this matter. The impact of PFAS and related compounds in drinking water is a topic of much discussion, with PHGSs and MCLG either at zero or at near zero. The OEHA public health goal for PFOA, octanoic acid, is 7 picograms per liter or 7 parts per quadrillion, which is well below the detection limit. It is effectively impossible to ensure that any water meets public health goals or MCLGs, which makes me wonder whether the state requirement for this type of hearing is overly alarmist. The district has invested in and placed into service an ion exchange PFAS removal facility to operate in conjunction with the blending facility. With this facility, the district is able to supply water in compliance with the MCL through the use of the ion exchange facility and blending with SFPUC water. Good job. I am glad to see that the district has also planned for the future by planning for a future expansion of the IX facility to 15 MGD to meet increased demands or potential interruption or change in the quality of the SFPUC water used for blending. With regards to bromate, I concur that the likely source is oxidation of bromide present in source water, possibly due to influx of seawater occurring during the ozonation process. I should restate that, due to influx of seawater into the source water, and then the oxidation occurring during the ozonation process. I have reviewed available literature, for example, Morrison et al. In Environmental Science and Technology, ACS 2023 on this topic, and concur that reduction of pH and sequestration of bromide with ammonium as part of pre-chloramination are first-line remediations for bromate formed as an unwanted byproduct of ozonation. I commend the district for following best available practices. My only formal request is that you include the detection limit for the approved standard method for each contaminant in the table on slide 7. Doing so will help quantify the range of contaminant concentrations which could report as not detect. Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else online who has not spoken yet and who would like to provide comment? You may raise your hand in the Zoom app or indicate in the chat that you would like to make a comment.
I see no hands up in the Zoom app, and I see no items in the chat.
Perfect. Okay. So does any directors have questions of staff or other directors based on the public comment received?
I have a couple of comments.
Is this comments based on what we received or just general comments on this item? If
General comments on this.
then you have a second bite. All right,
That's why you're the boss.
then, so if there's no comments, Director Wee?
It was noted that the MCL for PFAS is, I think, 15,000 times greater than the level of concern that was established in the documentation. I encourage you and suggest that a measure of total organic fluorine is something we should consider and monitor. It gives you an idea of, and no one's out there. And second, it may eventually become the measure, because rather than chasing scores of various compounds, there are 15,000 of them, that could be potentially identified. The total organic fluorine measurement would be one. If we met it, people would feel a little better. But realizing that we're still several orders of magnitude greater with our detection level limits than the actual level of concern. So I think Mr. Nishimura raised a good point on that. Thank you. And I have some other comments.
Then with that, I will close the public hearing. So now, Director Sethy, would you like to make any comments?
Yes, so this was reviewed by Director Gunther and I extensively in the Operations and Water Quality Committee. And I think given the results and the findings that you've presented tonight, I think we all owe a debt of gratitude to our staff that has been proactively working to make sure that we minimize any things that are in our water supply that shouldn't be there. And so I just want to thank the staff in general. Number two, I shared with the staff, Mr. Stevenson, I think read through the report. A very detailed scientific study, which I've just pulled up here, called Hold My Beer, a linkage between municipal water and brewing in the beer industry. And it is surprising the high levels of PFAS and PFOS that are in the most common beers that are sold in supermarkets, convenience stores across the country. Far higher than anyone has ever imagined. So I was thinking one day when we have our PFOS and PFAS completely eliminated from our system, we could become a beer capital of the country. But it is well worth reading this study. And I shared this with our friends at Aqua, thinking that this might make a good presentation at next Aqua conference. So those are my comments.
Thank you.
you.
Would would other board members like to offer any comments or
Sure.
make any statements?
First of all, to that, since PFAS are now regulated as under CERCLA, it'll be interesting to see if they take a look at the beer industry and the other beverages that are being sold across the counter. We used to think alcohol was the culprit. On several issues, areas that we did not do in our studies, the emerging contaminants. Every 5 years, they come up with a list of 30, most of it. If you add a few, take a few away.
Yep.
What, if any, work do we do to measure and monitor the emerging contaminants that have yet to reach an MCL and other regulatory level?
Can I just interject and ask that we stay on this particular report, please? I think UCMR monitoring is outside the scope of today's topic, right?
Technically is. Be happy to talk about that anytime. I think it's probably okay to just respond quickly to the
Okay.
one question. I mean, it's related, it's water quality, it's
right.
contaminants that don't have existing regulatory levels.
for
So
it.
maybe just quick response there.
Want to defer to Mr. Wickham on the.
So the contaminants of emerging concern that we monitor for are within the UCMR program, the Unregulated Contaminant Monitoring Rule program. This year, I believe we monitored for 30 of them, including 29 PFAS and lithium.
So there is a monitoring program established, but it's not part of this effort.
Correct. Yes, it's not related.
Yeah, a whole separate program where we are required to monitor for certain constituents that have no regulatory thresholds established, but the regulators would like the data. So we are required to monitor, and we do.
That's the unregulated contaminant monitoring rule number 5 of the federal EPA, UCMR 5. Like Mr. Wickham mentioned, 29 PFAS and 1 lithium, so 30. And that stems from what they call a tentatively identified compound list. That's all at the federal level, but every 5 years, the feds look at and say, we need to know the presence nationwide of these 30 compounds. So that list keeps changing.
And the risk of going out beyond the scope of this report, emerging black swans might be microplastics and hormones, pharmaceuticals. Is that in the offing, or do we?
Microplastics maybe, but I don't know about, are you referring to endocrine disruptors and stuff like that? The other one?
They've been mentioned, they've been discussed, but yet to make the regulatory requirements.
These are great questions, Director. This report, the Public Health Goals Report, specifically deals with contaminants that have an MCL already.
Yeah.
So they're regulated contaminants, but they have detections above the PHGs and MCLGs, so above the health only specific goals. The emerging contaminants, the different groups of them, including the UCMR candidates, other emerging contaminants that they're developing research and analytical methods for, like microplastics, aren't included within this report, and those monitoring programs are generally developed separately. Like in the case of microplastics specifically, that's one that's been evolving for a few years now, just as they're working on developing just a methodology to sample it. That's helpful, sir.
And this is just our product water. It would not cover the permeate of a treatment process.
Depending on the constituent, well, okay, these detections here for the public health report, yes, are treated water. Other contaminant constituents like microplastics, a lot of those are monitored for, or will be monitored for in the source water. So it really, for emerging contaminants, their monitoring location may vary, but for compliance monitoring and for the purpose of this report, it's all entry point to the distribution system or the treated water.
Fortunately, we do not have recycled water, where the permeate is suspect at best, and probably make them unfeasible to use recycled water in the future because of CERCLA and the permeate.
And back to this lovely report. Any other questions or statements that
Just-
directors want to make on this report?
Just a comment. I made this in the past about certain other reports like this. The danger is of these reports being weaponized against the public water industry. I mean, if you read this, we've had a couple of issues. If you look at the numbers, parts per trillion, parts per billion, there's more risk when I walk into my living room. So, you know, water industry has always been an easy target. We will continue to be an easy target. I get very frustrated by this because there's as far as I could see, no factor of risk involved. I could go out of country and expose myself to water supplies, probably will. Go out of country and expose myself to water supplies that are phenomenally different. We're chasing this. Sometimes the public wonders why their bills are where they are. So we'll continue to do it. Thank you, staff. You're doing a great job. Don't get me wrong. But, you know, we get this delivered to us. This is what we're told. We don't have really, we do our best. The fact, the outcomes of these and the goals, we don't always win. And I think with PFAS at parts per trillion, we did not win. This comes out now with the beer industry. I don't want to know what's in my wine. So anyway, thank you so much for a good report. Keep up the good fight.
All right, any other comments? If not, I'm going to say we are done. No action is required for this item since we're just receiving a report. So let's move on to the next item then. Thank you, staff. Great job. So next is item 6.1, board committee reports. Do I have any questions or comments from the board on the reports listed under 6.1? I'm not seeing any. Do I have any questions or comments from the members of the public, either online or attending in person, on any of the committee reports on item 6.1? I'm not seeing any hands. Okay, move on to, oh, is
Just had a
there?
hand go up, yeah.
Oh, all right. I see we have a hand online. Mr. Nishimura?
I feel that I'm not doing my job if I don't make a comment about the hardness. Oh, am I in the wrong section?
Yes, that would be
That's
6.2.
Two.
Hold that thought.
Sorry, my bad.
All right, item 6.2, operation reports. Any questions or comments from the directors?
I will let Mr. Nishimura comment.
All right. Mr. Nishimura?
My apologies for jumping the gun. Yes, I feel like I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't make a comment about your water hardness report at the end of your board packet. I noticed that the hardness is actually pretty good for a majority of the district. Surprisingly, the hardness coming out of TP2 is actually quite good. And therefore, all of Newark and to most of Fremont is getting water less than 100. It's just Union City that's trending a little bit high. So the usual comments of good job and anything you can do to get more of the lower hardness water further north into the service area would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments on any of the operational report from our member of public that's in attendance in person? No? All right. Then let's move on to item 6.3, staff presentation. 6.31 is water resources master plan update.
That's right. Thank you, President Huang. And we just had a brief presentation this evening. The board has been working hard on the various workshops that we've had related to our water resources master plan. And there has been a whole lot of work that's been happening in the background since our last workshop. So much so that we thought it's probably good just to come and just touch bases with the board. Last you saw, you were taking a look at a sort of a broad swath of lots of potential sort of portfolio packages and approaches. And so we do have a board workshop coming up, but before we got there, we thought we'd give you a bit of a heads up as to sort of the direction that things are going. And to do that, I don't know if Ms. Heides has any other introductory remarks?
Just briefly, yes, we are excited to be here today, and the team has been hard at work on deep dives on many of the water supply options and working with the portfolios, doing quite a bit of modeling, costing, all those different things. And so we've been in the thick of it, and we're excited to be coming out in 2 weeks to do a full workshop with the board with more details. And so tonight, Mr. Ethan Birch, our senior administrative analyst, who is also serving as our deputy project manager for the project, is here to give a report to the board. And we also do have Thomas Nizer online just in case of any deep dive questions. And so I will turn it over to Mr. Birch.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. As Ed and Laura mentioned, we just want to give kind of a brief overview of what we've been doing and an idea of what to expect. An idea of what to expect in a couple of weeks when we reconvene for the next board workshop. So our agenda tonight is pretty much as described: where we've been, what we're doing, and what to expect. So the first set of slides here is going to be things you've seen before, things you're familiar with, but just to kind of refresh your memories since it's been a few months since we last met. So back in May was our last workshop, and then in the intervening time, we have been doing a lot of portfolio building and modeling and a lot of research and characterization and knocking ideas around and trying to bring together a set of portfolios for the next workshop. So this is where we're at, moving into that next stage. You can see we've had a number of extended team workshops. We've had a lot of subject matter expert meetings, and we're progressing along well. We're moving into the later stages of the project. A quick refresh on the goals. These are the goals that we have been using to guide our work. A lot of emphasis on reliability and affordability. Our planning objectives, as another quick refresh here. Quick acronyms, and most of these slides are really for your handheld reference. And again, I know it's information you've all seen before, but okay. So the portfolio development process. This was key when we last met. We took the 44 original supply options. We distilled them into a list of 24. We put together some themes for portfolios, And then we started assigning those options into those portfolios in different ways to test them against different criteria. So that's that analysis and refinement at the bottom there. When we last met, we presented a series of portfolio concepts. The ideas were to inform our testing and to inform our modeling. And this is what those initial portfolios that we looked at were. So we had the baseline portfolio and then a series of other options built around different goals. And then finally, and this is one of the most important ones to keep in mind, this is the future condition scenario analysis slide. So you have on the left what we're characterizing as the mild climate scenario, also the low uncertainty scenario, and then as you move right, you move into more extreme climate outcomes and less or more uncertainty rather. So this is something to keep in mind as we look at these portfolios, because where we land along this series of scenarios really impacts the needs as we build those portfolios. So what we've been doing since May, we took those initial portfolio concepts, we developed full portfolios, and then we ran a series of tests and studies against them. We modeled them, modeled reliability against the various climate scenarios. We had a staff workshop where we met with members from around the district to kind of do some initial discussion of these concepts, and then take that input and refine the portfolios a little bit further. And what that's led us to is some early findings here. So there were some common themes that really jumped out at us. And the first and maybe highest level here is that in that scenario A, the low uncertainty situation, we can already meet that scenario without any new interventions. The district's current portfolio is already reliable enough for that. And then the B and C, the more severe conditions, demand about an additional 2,000 acre feet of supply and expanded storage. So a little bit more severe, but 2,000 acre feet. And under our current with our current watershed, just by optimizing our operations and removing some of the bottlenecks in our system, the local watershed already provides another 1,500 acre feet or so of yield that we could take advantage of through, like I said, optimization and removal of bottlenecks. So really, in our planning, something that's jumped out is that scenario C is that's where we really start to, the rubber meets the road. That's where we start to see a need for more intervention and for more extreme solutions. That's the higher uncertainty scenario, right? So at that point, we have to make greater and greater interventions to make sure we meet that reliability target that we've set. What we are doing, fundamentally is looking for a solution that bridges the gap between scenarios A, B, and C without asset stranding and without overcommitting. Really finding a way to balance the costs of intervention against the desire for that 90% level of reliability. There's a variety of ways we can achieve that through building out different portfolios, through reducing reliance on higher cost sources of water, et cetera. But that's really one of the key trade-offs we're seeing, is that cost and reliability. We're also starting to see a trade-off for the board to consider between kind of a progressive incremental approach that looks at the developing climate scenario and allows for kind of trigger points into moving into new project phases, or preemptive construction of large interventions and resource development. So what to expect at the August 28th workshop? We'll be discussing some of those trade-offs. We'll be evaluating the portfolios, we'll be discussing the trade-offs, and we will be presenting up to 3 refined portfolios, including a staff recommendation based on some of those early findings, based on board input and goals and objectives. And then finally, we will receive board input on portfolio selection. We may need to do some additional adjustment, some refining, but that is the goal for the next workshop, is to reach that point. And that's the end of my slides. So I'm happy to take any questions in advance of 2 weeks from now.
Questions or comments from the board?
I have one question.
Director Sethy?
Under good presentation, I like the pace of it. But under scenario C, what percentage shortage of water does that represent for the community?
I'm going to ask Mr. Nizer to speak to that. I don't remember the precise percentage. Oh, we've lost him. Okay.
He's now a panelist. He just moved him
got it.
to a panelist. So Mr. Nizer, you have any thoughts about that question?
Yes, sir. It's a great question. I don't remember the exact number, but it is quite a bit more severe than the board has ever considered as an acceptable level of shortage. We're talking on the order of like 30–40% in some of the scenarios. So
Yeah, and remember that. So sorry.
Just
Go ahead,
as a
Thomas.
reminder, scenario C is a sort of a 95% exceedance mid-century climate change. So it's a worse track climate change by the year 2050. But as a reminder, it tracks towards a middle level scenario climate change for the year 2075. So scenario C has a nice balance of a more severe but credible mid-century or a plus 50-year middle of the road condition. And that's why we're taking it so seriously.
Good. I look forward to the presentation in a couple of weeks. And I do have a second question quickly. Our consultant, Woodward and Kern, were they going through modeling these different scenarios for us as well?
We've done some modeling in-house as well. Mr. Z has done some modeling, and then I believe Woodard and Kern has done modeling also. So it's a joint
Combination.
effort. Yeah.
Kind of a shared effort where we have the real expertise and deep knowledge of particular details. You know, we'll handle that. We've got some outstanding folks on staff. And then also where Woodard and Kern is where they've got the expertise and the efficiency, that's where they'll do some modeling. So it's been a shared effort.
Director Wee?
Yes. A comment I made earlier is that 2050 is relatively short term. That's near term, current plan. It's not long-term planning. I would encourage us to have a narrative of what the long-term plan might be. Second, I'd encourage us to develop or to acknowledge some fundamentals and recognized practices in water policy. Own and control your water resources, watershed, and pipelines, and much like Irvine Ranch, even if need be the farmland. But have control of your water supply, and the best way to control it is ownership. Second, that you have in this area, we have an unlimited water supply in the San Francisco Bay when you look at the value of water at $2,500 an acre foot, which is what I made this comment at Bosca. $2,500 an acre foot. The San Francisco Bay is an unlimited water supply. Not to worry about. Next, the regulatory concerns we really have to worry about are the ones that are being put in by the conservation people and talk about gallons per capita. And yet our development pattern in this area, 126 units per acre on the Capitol Avenue tenements that they're going to build across from City Hall, Capitol Avenue and Paseo Padre. 290 units going into downtown Centerville, all affordable housing, but 62 units to the acre. Line of 5 buildings on Osgood at the 60+ units per acre. At those levels, we don't have to worry about conservation because we meet the per capita, which is the metric used by the state of California. Next is to understanding that in good water planning, you avoid open channel conveyance. You don't have to deal with the environmental community. You're doing it the Vallecita's Channel, you need to do it with Alameda Creek. Just and find a way, take a look at the Niles Canyon Aqueduct and other elements to bring the water in by pipe, not open channel. Next, there's a whole series of feel-good and environmentalist type projects with de minimis water supply, such as capture for stormwater capture, the worst water quality you can imagine. Why would you do that? And yet it's politically popular. Conservation as a way of life is a legal requirement, but it makes no sense. Drought is episodic, it is a contingency, and droughts should be looked at in a contingency planning mode, not as a basis for your water development. And that we have shown that we have extraordinary flexibility in our water demand through social media. Don't need to put major expenses into conservation when people will voluntarily reduce their water use if you ask them to. We've repeated that time and time again. So it escapes the current water model planning process, and I encourage us to consider it as you come with your final layout. And you also, one more, you have some emerging contaminant issues, the black swans coming down the pike, and they're showstoppers. It's a reason to avoid at all cost recycled water.
I think we'll have a great discussion in 2 weeks. This will be a continuation from our discussion from back in May, I believe.
May 29th. I think.
So looking forward to that discussion. Any other comments? I see Director Gunther looking at me. No? Okay.
I found, the comments interesting, and I'll make certainly more in 2 weeks. But I also feel that, there's a need in our future for political, I want to use the word activism, but to be aware of what's going on around us. That scenario C could get really messy. And it could get messy as how things are dictated to us. Certainly some of the stuff we heard tonight. PFAS, all these contaminants, et cetera. So I'm going to leave it at that. And because 2 weeks, I'll be there.
All right. Any questions or comments on our members of the public, either in person or online, on this issue? Not seeing any interest. Okay, then moving on to General Manager's report, please.
Okay, thank you, President Huang. Just a few quick items here. First of all, the first item, 6.4.1, just a reminder really, seeking input from all of you as well as many members of our staff in terms of preferences for committee assignments for the Association of California Water Agency committees. You all have an email. Many of you, I've heard from you already, so thank you. I appreciate that. If I haven't heard from you and you're interested in participating in an Aqua committee, please respond to that email by September 12th. And if you could, be sure that our district secretary, Ms. Sue, is also on that email so she can make sure that I'm not missing something in terms of making sure what we understand are your preferences. Item 6.4.2. Also associated with the Association of California Water Agencies. This is what it's this time of the cycle at Aqua. It's time to cast our vote for Aqua overall organization officers, president, vice president, and also the Region 5 Board of Directors. And so I know our president here, who is our designated vote caster, is interested in seeking your thoughts in terms of how the district's vote should go.
So for Aqua is recommending Ernie Avila as Aqua President. That's your preferred candidate. And for Vice President is Carol Lee Gonzalez Brady. And I believe she is from Rancho California Water District. So our choice is either go with the Aqua slate or we write someone in. Do I,
I support the Aqua slate. I sat in on the candidate interviews a couple of weeks ago.
okay, so that's President, Vice President, and the committee, right? Region 5 committee, which include our Director Weed as a board member.
I hope you guys can get behind Director Weed. You nominated him. So it'd be awful awkward right now for you to say no, don't vote for
Okay, for
Director
the
Weed.
Region 5, the slate recommended by Aqua for chair is Sarah Palmer. From Zone 7, vice chair is John Varela. From Santa Clara Valley Water District, board members, we have Steve Hopper. From United Water Conservation District, Antonio Martinez, vice president of Coco County Water District. Mr. John Mueller from Coastal County Water District, Director Weed, and Floyd Wicks from Montecito Water District. So I hear a recommendation from Director Sethy to vote for the Aqua recommendation. Do I have any support objections?
I think we should vote for them before they withdraw their nominations.
All right, I'll cast my vote now. How's that? All right, with that, thank you.
Okay, we have a couple of additional GM reports to provide just real quickly. First of all, there's an awful lot going on in Sacramento. As you know, in terms of the legislative cycle, we are sort of rounding third base right now. And Ms. Heides has a kind of a quick heads up on some activity that we're working through with our friends on the South Bay Aqueduct.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. We've been working quickly with both Santa Clara Valley Water District and Zone 7, our partners on the South Bay Aqueduct, to pull together a letter related to the Delta Conveyance Project budget trailer bill to express the importance of the project and the value of the trailer bill to speeding up the schedule. So it's still in motion and in draft, but is proposed to go as early as tomorrow or Monday out to our local legislators so that they're aware of the importance to all of the cities in our collective service areas. So we will certainly be sharing that out when it goes out. And I should note that it does note that we recognize this budget trailer bill does not mean approval or finalization of our participation in the project, and does not circumvent environmental processes. It just helps streamline some of the timeline items. So thank you.
Right, and is beneficial to get the project to you all and to the other bodies that need to make decisions about this project, to get it there efficiently, to get it there in a way that preserves the value of the project by keeping the cost down, because every day is a delay and it costs more money. So, we apologize for, again, not having the actual finished product to share with you all, but it's a heads up that this is frantically being worked on behind the scene. Our president and vice president had a chance to see a kind of a preview, but it's still being worked on. Again, this will be a letter it's a joint letter that includes ACWD, Zone 7 Water Agency, and Valley Water. So we're working hard on that item. Okay.
So quick comment. Delta Conveyance is looking at the end beyond our current planning horizon of 2050. Once it gets started and built. If it's not built, it's something we put in the narrative, is we're looking at a deteriorated water quality from the state water project. What the implications of that are, I think should be at least discussed. Part of it is a seasonal water supply, which may lead us to more storage and or additional treatment of the imported water requirements, or an alternate source in San Francisco Bay. Whatever, there are alternatives, but it ain't a done deal.
Yeah, and that is part of our overall messaging related to the project, is that the deterioration of the Delta and the risks in the Delta are getting worse all the time. And there are alternatives to Delta conveyance, but they're very expensive. They're getting more expensive all the time, and they're not going to help with affordability. And they are going to result in a hit to the economic vitality of our service area and the areas served by the State Water Project. So that is part of the messaging. I will move on since this isn't even on the agenda, so I'll move on. And that is, we did have some excitement today with regard to our distribution system. We had a water main break. I don't report on every single water main break, but this one seems to be a fairly sizable break, a lot of activity. And I would ask Mr. Dan Stevenson, our Director of Operation and Maintenance, no relation, to provide a quick update.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Good evening again. So we had a water main break that occurred on Awanee Court right near Sentinel Drive this morning. It's a neighborhood over by Hidden Valley Tank. Call came in just before 8 o'clock. We had distribution maintenance crews on scene by 8:30, and the repairs were completed by noon. Break occurred on a 12-inch AC pipe, and after the pipe was excavated, we installed a repair band. The break did cause some localized flooding and some water that got onto some adjacent properties. The district's risk management representative went on site, spoke with some residents there that were affected. So had those conversations to address some of those concerns. The roadway did suffer some damage, made some temporary repairs. We'll do some permanent restoration in the upcoming weeks. Crews worked quickly and diligently to minimize the damage and restore the service as quickly as possible. So, concludes my report.
And we had a very upset mayor.
Yeah, we did get a call, yes, from the mayor.
A very interested mayor, which is great, looking out for his constituents. And also, while we were here in the board meeting, I received an email from him about another person that had contacted him. So we are reaching out to that person too as we speak. Okay, finally, under GM reports, just a heads up, I am out of jury duty now. I am very grateful for that. I'm happy to be released. I appreciate your patience and over my sort of lack of availability over the last nearly couple of months. And again, I appreciate the support of the staff and the great team that you have here that makes things work no matter what. So I did miss a little bit of time off with my family during that jury duty. So I have been told by my family I am going to have to make that up. So I am planning on taking a few days off in September, between September 11 and September 15. The good part is, the fun part is September 11 is a board meeting. So I will not be here for the September 11th board meeting, but have no fear. Ms. Heides stepped up for the opportunity. She said, please, let me run it. And I said, Laura, for the love of Pete, you do so much already. And she said, I insist. So I said, okay, you don't tell her no. So anyway, just a heads up that I will be gone on the 11th. Okay, that's it for general manager's reports.
All right, next is director's comments, reports on meeting attended, and agenda item requests. Director Sethy, I believe item 7.1 is yours.
Yes. So I attended the Delta Protection Commission meeting on July 17th. It ran from 5 to 8 p.m. It was the first time I had dinner at a public meeting. Food was provided for the audience, and or you could order your own special meal. So that was interesting. And I went really on behalf of the Delta Conveyance Finance Authority as the chair for a particular presentation, because I believe that there may be an interest, if the conveyance system is funded and goes through, that all of the State Water Project members would have an interest in helping out with one aspect of what's going on in the Delta. So this was the report on the National Heritage Area Advisory Committee by the Vice Chair, Elizabeth Patterson. And I am inviting her to give a presentation at our next DCFA meeting, and she may present to the DCA as well. So they have identified 200 places around the Delta of historic importance, and they want to create a tourist industry around the Delta and various sites. And so they are soliciting funding from different sources and getting commitments right now. And one possible source of funding could be contributions by the State Water Project members that support the Delta Conveyance System. So it was put like this: put your money where your mouth is if you really have an interest in taking care of the Delta. I've talked with my vice chair on the DCFA from Met, and he's very supportive of those minority communities. I'll just put that in general in the Delta. So it was a very interesting presentation. There was also some other presentations, all were very interesting. And the one I found kind of surprising was consideration of approval of the striped bass slot limit proposal. Today, you catch anything over 18 inches in striped bass with a catch limit of 2 per day. They now want to narrow down the band from 18 to 30 inches so they can allow the larger striped bass to grow even bigger. Yeah, believe it or not. Because above 30 inches, it's catch and release, and it attracts the billion-dollar sport trophy winners, you know, from around the country and around the world. So they want to let the bass that's over 30 inches get as big as possible, which is our major predatory source against the salmon.
And steelhead.
And steelhead. So representatives of Fish Bio were there, the same folks that John and I went on a tour with. And the same lady from the National Heritage thing spoke against this proposal. Other people spoke against it too, but were all booed down by the audience, which is primarily the whole economy of Rio Vista is run as a fishing industry. So, but the only group that cheered was the Sierra Club representatives, because a large constituency of their membership are the anglers in the angler community. And so it was a strange dichotomy to see the Sierra Club supporting the recommendation of Fish and Game, which met with the anglers to come up with the recommendation to the Delta Protection Agency. And the very thing that the agency adopted, the commission, was against the interest of trying to get steelhead and salmon to survive in the Delta. And the Sierra Club was supporting the predatory fish, which was just a strange sight to see. Let's say that. I found a presentation on Delta farmland conversion very interesting. It's interesting to know what's going on all those activities and how quickly things are speeding up. And yeah, all in all, it was a very interesting meeting. First time I'd attended. Perhaps in the future, I'll go to a future meeting if I see something of interest on the agenda. But Ms. Heides, I'm going to talk to you more about some thoughts on how state water contractors that support the conveyance project might back some of these communities.
Sounds great. And it may rise to the level of part of the community benefits program for the project too. So I'd love
Right,
to check.
right. The governor had some good actions that he took in the last week with 200 million. And our former board colleague, Dick Quigley, was in the news today because he's trying to secure some of that money for the aqueduct trail
Want to do a trail.
that would go
Yeah.
through Livermore and Pleasanton. So anyway, real interesting meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Sethy. Any other directors' comments?
I have one.
Director Akbari?
I actually have an agenda item request probably for the LICA committee, and this actually came from a conversation with one of our interns, Megan Lee, who was asking me questions about our RAN system, our rapid
Alert notification system.
Yeah.
very good.
So one of the questions that she posed to me was around language support, primarily because in the time of an emergency, folks might not necessarily have access to somebody who might translate for them, or might have limited internet service to be able to translate even on their phone. So the question of language support and how do we communicate effectively to folks who might not speak English as their first language during a time of emergency came up. I thought that was really interesting, and I actually did not have an answer for that question. So if we can maybe just get a refresher on the RAN system in a LICA committee meeting, and then maybe directly get some information around how they manage language support, that'd be very helpful.
Okay.
Any other directors' comments, agenda item requests? All right. Hearing none, let's move on to the next item, which is item 8.1, closed session. So 8.1 is pursuant to California Government Code, section 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators, agency designated negotiators are at Stevenson, Jonathan Wunderlich, Laura Heides, Amy Reeve, and Stacy Q. The employee organizations, Operating Engineers Local 3, and the Alameda County Water District Operators Association. With that, it's 7:43. We'll
Can-
adjourn to
Can I ask a quick question before we adjourn?
the engineering
Because we
conference.
have a member of the public here. And I saw a package somewhere down the hallway that looked quite special and related to this gentleman.
It's a surprise. That's why there's a wrapper on it. We're not going to talk about it.
I think it will be well appreciated. And I just wanted to say that before you happen to leave and tell the noted.
It's coming, but it's not on our agenda this evening.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, with that then, 7:44, adjourn to the operations. All right, it's 8:50 and the board has returned from closed session. Council, would you help with the report back, please?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. The board met in closed session under item 8.1 pursuant to California Government Code section 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators. Agency designated negotiators were Ed Stevenson, Jonathan Wunderlich, Laura Heides, Amy Reeve, and Stacy Q. Employee organizations, Operator Engineers Local 3, and the Alameda County Water District Operators Association. And in the closed session, direction was given to the agency designated negotiators. And that concludes the open session report.
All right, with that, I'll say the meeting is adjourned at 8:51.
Good job.